Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, I wanted to discuss another accounting firm that reported revenues, and this time it's RSM. They're not one of the Big Four accounting firms, but they're one of the top 10 accounting firms. And their revenue grew to $7.26 billion, and that represents an increase of 15.8%. And one of their largest growing services was consulting services, and that grew by a whopping 38.2%. And that was followed by accounting, which grew by 18.7%, and tax grew by 8.4%, and audit grew by 7.6%. RSM said that these latest figures marked the seventh consecutive year of strong growth globally. In 2021 saw RSM member firms transition from supporting clients through the pandemic to investing in a radically different post-pandemic future. The adoption of new technology, evolving sustainability commitments, and a wave of M&A activity among the global middle market were key drivers of growth. And the reason they say middle market is because they are not the Big Four. They are not a Big Four accounting firm. And another thing that they said is that RSM recorded 276 deals in the first half of 2021, which equated to 2 transactions completed by the firm in the region per day across a 6-month period. And the region is Europe. And they also say that member firms saw an increase in demand for cross-border tax advisory as a complexity of international tax regulation and the associated reputational risks continue to rise. And both trends were addressed by launching the Global M&A Tax Virtual Hub, which is a collaboration across New York, London, Hong Kong, Amsterdam, and Mexico City. And they also say that environmental, social, and corporate governance has risen in prominence on the corporate agenda. And this is driven partly by changes from COVID-19 and nations' net zero commitments, and multiple other factors. And RSM said that they also saw growth across all regions, with more than 40 new offices launched this year alone. And North America had impressive revenue growth of 15%, and consulting services in North America grew by 50% in 2021 alone. So as you can see, the growth at RSM is really, really big, especially since they're a smaller firm, but they have way bigger growth than all the Big Four accounting firms. It appears like they're making huge gains in consulting services, and this makes a lot of sense, being that they don't have as many conflicts of interest as the Big Four accounting firms do. And so we'll see more and more growth in these mid-tier accounting firms as economies tend to do well, but when the economies go down, these mid-tier firms are going to get crushed. It's just like consulting in the Big Four. Consulting in the Big Four does really well until downturns happen or expense cuts happen. But for everybody that's worried about getting a job at the Big Four accounting firm, if you can't get a job there, especially in the consulting area, then you should definitely consider one of the mid-tier consulting firms or accounting firms, because as you see here, they have huge growth, and they're trying to mirror all the services the Big Four accounting firms do. So maybe you can leverage a career at a mid-tier accounting firm into a potential career at the Big Four accounting firms. But there's really huge growth for RSM. They're really making rapid gains in the top 10 accounting firms. $7.6 billion is a lot of revenue. It's not close to the Big Four accounting firms. As we now know, the Big Four accounting firms, the smallest one, KPMG, makes $30 billion a year, but it's substantial compared to prior years. And as we said, there's tons of competition in the consulting world. There's tons of money being spent in the consulting world, especially for big businesses, because as we said, COVID-19 kind of changed the landscape of small businesses to big businesses. It shifted a lot of wealth and revenue to big businesses that were able to sustain during COVID-19. And so they need a lot of guidance around multiple things going forward: COVID-19, ESG, etc. As they adapt to government legislation as well. So there's just a lot of opportunity out there in the accounting and consulting world. And as we saw with RSM, the lowest growth area was audit, and that's across all the firms. Audit is just, there's just not enough changes there to maintain huge growth. So it's going to continue this way of consulting services being the largest growth factor unless we get a downturn in any part of the global economy. But that's the podcast for today. Make sure to subscribe to get future updates and check out the show notes for useful links. Thanks for listening.